When we add fractions, what we need to keep in mind is that it's easy when we have what we call a common denominator. And common denominator is really a fancy way of saying same parts. Okay, so fractions are the same number of parts. So to be able to add fractions by considering the lowest common denominator is what we want to do today. And we also want to try to add mixed numbers together. All right, let's get stuck into it. So fractions with the same denominator can be added together easily. And an example of that here, we've got 3/8, or 3 parts out of 8, plus 2 parts out of 8 equals 5 parts out of 8. The problem is with this one here is when we've got 1/3 plus 1/4, it's really difficult to add these together because if this is the resulting picture, then I don't know what fraction that actually represents. But if we have this same problem again and actually divide or put these into fractions of the same number of parts, and in this case what we're looking at is 12-part fractions, then it can be really easy. This corresponds to this image here. And notice that that is simply 1, 2, 3, 4 parts out of 12. And this one here is 1, 2, 3 parts out of 12. So 4 parts out of 12, or 1/3, plus 3 parts out of 12, or 1/4, is equal to 7 parts out of 12. And notice that it's really easy to add fractions together when they've got the same number of parts. So to add or subtract fractions, they must have the same denominator. It shouldn't actually say must, but it helps. Okay, now I'm going to give you an example of when you may not have the same denominator is 1/2 plus 1/4. They don't have the same denominator, but we know from maybe a netball game or something like that, 1/2 a game plus 1/4 of a game means that you got 3/4 of a game. Okay, so it certainly is possible to do without it, but it's easier if you convert this 1/2 to a fraction out of 4, which is 2 parts out of 4 plus 1 part out of 4, and that's 3 parts out of 4. Right, here's some examples. So this one here says 4/9 plus 2/9. Now note that the fractions have the same number of parts. So this is 4 parts out of 9 plus 2 parts out of 9. That's 6 parts out of 9. And what we're going to do is simplify this fraction a little bit by dividing by 3 and dividing by 3. That's 2/3. Okay, so 4/9 plus 2/9 is the same as 2/3. Okay, so that's another way of saying if I ate 4 parts out of 9 of a cake and then I came back and ate another 2 parts out of 9, in fact, what I would have eaten in total is 2/3 of the cake. Right, this one here is 5 parts out of 6 plus 2 parts out of 6. That's 7 parts out of 6. And you can leave it as an improper fraction, or you may choose to convert that to a mixed number by simply going 6 into 7 goes once. I've got 1 left over and I was trying to put 6 in it. All right, 2/3 plus 1/4. That's hard. Okay, so that's one of those situations where I actually don't know what the answer is to this one. Okay, I don't know. So what I'm going to do here is find the common denominator, okay, or I'm going to make fractions of the same number of parts. Now to do that, what you do with these two numbers here is you find the lowest common multiple of 3 and 4. Okay, and we've got our lowest common multiple is 12. Okay, so both of these numbers go into 12. Now we're going to multiply 4 by 3, and we're going to multiply 3 by 4. What we get is an answer of 8 parts out of 12 plus 3 parts out of 12. Now that number is the same as that, and that number is the same as that. So if they're the same as that, why did we do this? Well, 8 parts out of 12 plus 3 parts out of 12 is simply 11 parts out of 12. It's really easy to add fractions of equal parts. It's really hard to add fractions of unequal parts. All right, let's have a look at this scenario here. So what we've got is a mixed number. And with mixed numbers, my strong suggestion to you is the first move you make is that you convert them to improper fractions. Right, so let's go ahead and do that. So 2 times 5 is 10, plus 1 is 11 on 5, plus 3, 3's are 9, plus 2 is 11 on 3. Now what we're going to do is find what we call a lowest common denominator, or a fraction or a way we can make these the same number of parts. So what we do is we consider 5 and 3, and what we're going to do is consider the multiples of 5, the multiples of 3. So 15 is going to be what we call our LCD, our lowest common denominator. We're going to multiply that by 5, that by 3, that by 3, that by 5. And our answer here is 33 on 15 plus 55 on 15. And when we add those together, I've got 33, 43, 48 on 15. Now note that 48 is divisible by 3 and 15 is divisible by 3. So let's simplify this by dividing by 3 on 3. 3 goes into 48 16 times, 3 goes into 15 5 times. Our answer is 16 on 5. An optional move is to convert this to a mixed fraction. It should be 2, no, it'll be 3 and 1/5. That is entirely optional. Okay, so many of you will pick up this strategy and may have been taught this even in primary school, that to get a lowest common denominator, what you do is you multiply these two numbers together. Okay, so 5 times 3 is 15, which gave us our lowest common denominator here, but it doesn't always work. This one here, when I multiply 10 by 20, what I get is 200. Okay, and I could actually do that. I could multiply that by 10 and multiply that by 20, multiply that by 20, and that will work. Now, the only problem is that the numbers are going to start to get quite large. Okay. Now, the idea is that to find a lowest common denominator, what we do is we get the lowest common multiple of these denominators. So 10, 20, 20, and we've got it already. Our lowest common denominator is going to be 20. So we want to make these fractions out of 20 parts. Times that by 2 and times that by 2. And this, since it's already 20 parts, we're not going to touch it. 6 out of 20 plus 3 out of 20 is equal to 9 out of 20, and we're done. Right, so our exercise today is 4E on page 202, I believe. Right, and there's a tougher problem there. If you've completed the work, have a go at this problem.